The morning sun peeked through the steamy windows of the Golden Pancake, casting warm shadows across the checkered floor tiles. Behind the counter, Min worked her magic, turning pancake batter into perfectly golden circles while humming off-key to the old radio playing in the corner. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, with rebellious strands escaping to frame her face. Just another day at the bustling downtown diner. "Order up. Table 6 needs their breakfast special, extra crispy bacon," she called out, her voice carrying that familiar hint of playful sarcasm that had become her trademark. The regulars had gotten used to her quick wit and sharp comebacks, finding comfort in the way she turned every morning into an impromptu comedy show. Mr. Lee, a retired teacher who'd been coming to the diner for the past decade, settled into his usual corner booth. Before he could even open his mouth, Min was already pouring his coffee. Black, no sugar, just the way he liked it. "Let me guess," she quipped, balancing 3 plates on her other arm. "You're here to escape Mrs. Lee's healthy breakfast revolution again." Her eyes sparkled with mischief as Mr. Lee chuckled, nodding sheepishly. "You know me too well," he admitted, unfolding his newspaper. "A man can't live on kale smoothies alone." The morning rush brought its usual parade of characters. Hurried office workers grabbing coffee to go, young couples sharing syrup-drowned waffles, and tired parents trying to wrangle energetic kids into their seats. Min handled them all with the same quick humor and efficiency, her laughter echoing across the diner like a shield that kept everyone entertained but never too close. Behind the counter, her coworker Raj watched her with knowing eyes. He'd been there long enough to see how she used jokes to dodge personal questions, how her smile would fade slightly when couples got too affectionate in their booths, how she'd retreat to the kitchen when conversations turned to relationships and family. The truth was, Min's wit had become her armor after her marriage fell apart 2 years ago. She'd learned that making people laugh was easier than letting them see the cracks in her heart. The diner had become her stage, and every shift was another performance where she could be the funny waitress everyone loved, but nobody really knew. Between refilling coffee cups and taking orders, she'd catch glimpses of her reflection in the chrome coffee machines, sometimes wondering if anyone could see past her carefully crafted persona. The wedding ring 10 line had long since faded, but the memories still lingered like the smell of burnt toast that occasionally wafted from the kitchen. "You're on fire today," Raj commented during a brief lull, as Min expertly balanced a tray of milkshakes. That joke about the businessman's tie looking like his cat's artwork. Priceless. Min winked, sliding the milkshakes onto a table where 3 giggling teenagers sat. "Well, someone's got to keep this place entertaining. We can't rely on your infamous burnt toast to do all the work." As the morning wore on, she moved through the diner like a well-rehearsed dance, her notepad becoming filled with orders and the occasional doodle. Each customer interaction was a chance to perfect her routine. A quip here, a clever observation there, always keeping the mood light and the emotional distance comfortable. But sometimes, in quiet moments between the breakfast and lunch rush, when the only sounds were the sizzle of the grill and the gentle hum of conversation, Min would feel a familiar ache in her chest. It was during these moments that she'd throw herself into cleaning already spotless counters or reorganizing the perfectly arranged condiment stations, anything to keep moving, to keep the laughter flowing, to keep the walls up. Little did she know that life at the Golden Pancake was about to serve up something she hadn't ordered. A chance to remember that there's more to living than just making others laugh, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let your guard down long enough to let someone see the real you behind the smile. The rain came down in sheets that Tuesday morning, turning the city streets into flowing rivers. The Golden Pancake's windows were foggy with condensation, creating a cozy barrier between the warm diner and the gloomy world outside. Min was arranging sugar packets in their holders when the bell above the door chimed. A man rushed in, shaking water from his umbrella like a dog after a swim. His navy blue sweater had dark patches where the rain had soaked through, and his glasses were so foggy he had to take them off to wipe them with his sleeve. Something about the way he moved, careful, deliberate, caught Min's attention. "Looks like you could use a towel with that menu," she called out, already reaching under the counter for the clean dish towel she kept for emergencies. "Or maybe a life raft." The man looked up, and for the first time in ages, Min felt her usual quick wit falter. His eyes were kind, but they held a depth that made her usual joking comments feel somehow inadequate. He smiled, accepting the towel with a grateful nod. "I think I'll stick with just coffee for now," he replied, his voice warm and steady. "Though I wouldn't say no to a arc if you've got one hidden in the kitchen." Min found herself smiling, not her usual customer service smile, but something more genuine. "Fresh out of arcs, I'm afraid. But we do have the best coffee in town. And by best, I mean it's hot and caffeinated." As she poured his coffee, she noticed the papers spread out on his table, pages filled with neat handwriting and careful comments in red ink. "Teacher?" she asked, nodding toward the stack. He shook his head. "Grief counselor. These are notes from my support group sessions." He paused, then added with a slight smile, "I help people find their way back to living when life hits them hard." Min felt her chest tighten. Usually, this would be her cue to crack a joke, to deflect with humor, and move on to the next table. Instead, she found herself asking, "Does it work?" Helping people find their way back. "It's not about finding the old way," he replied, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. "It's about discovering a new path, even when you think all the roads are closed." The words hit closer to home than Min wanted to admit. She busied herself with wiping down the already clean counter, aware that this stranger had somehow seen past her carefully constructed walls with just a few simple words. Throughout the morning, she found her eyes drifting back to his corner table. He worked quietly, occasionally looking up to watch the rain or observe the other customers. Unlike her regular patrons, who expected a show with their meals, he seemed content with comfortable silence. During a quiet moment, he caught her attention again. "You know," he said, "sometimes the people who make others laugh the hardest are carrying the heaviest weights themselves." Min felt exposed, as if he'd read every page of her story without her speaking a word. "That's a bit deep for a rainy Tuesday morning, don't you think?" She deflected, but her voice lacked its usual sharp edge. "Maybe," he replied, gathering his papers. "Or maybe rainy Tuesdays are perfect for deep thoughts." He left a generous tip and a business card on the table. Just before heading back into the rain, he turned back. "By the way, I'm June." As Min cleared his table, she found herself staring at the card longer than necessary. The diner felt different somehow, as if Jun's presence had shifted something in the air. Raj noticed her unusual quietness and raised an eyebrow. "You okay?" he asked, genuine concern in his voice. Min tucked the card into her apron pocket, surprised to find her hands slightly shaking. "Yeah," she said, then added more quietly, "just thinking about rainy Tuesdays." For the rest of her shift, Min's usual jokes felt different, less like armor and more like habit. She caught herself wondering what Jun would make of her rapid-fire quips and carefully maintained distance. The rain continued outside, but inside the golden pancake, something had changed. A crack had appeared in Min's well-constructed walls, letting in a glimmer of something she hadn't felt in years: hope. It started as an ordinary Thursday at the golden pancake. The morning light streamed through the windows, the coffee maker hummed its familiar tune, and Min moved between tables with her usual quick steps and quicker wit. But some days, the universe has other plans. They walked in around 10 a.m., a young couple so clearly in love it almost hurt to look at them. The woman wore a simple gold band that caught the light every time she reached across the table to touch her husband's hand. They shared their pancakes, feeding each other bites and giggling like teenagers. "Would you like more coffee?" Min asked, proud of how steady she kept her voice. The couple looked up with matching smiles, and suddenly Min was thrown back 2 years, to another breakfast, another set of matching rings, another promise that didn't last. "Yes, please," the woman said, then turned to her husband. "Remember our first date here? You were so nervous you spilled coffee all over yourself." The man laughed, his eyes never leaving his wife's face. "Best mess I ever made." Min's hand trembled slightly as she poured the coffee. A drop splashed onto the table, and she quickly wiped it away, muttering an apology. Her usual jokes felt stuck in her throat, replaced by a lump she couldn't swallow down. The lunch rush picked up, and Min threw herself into work with almost desperate energy. She moved faster, smiled wider, laughed louder. Anything to drown out the echoes of her own memories. But every time she passed the happy couple's table, the weight in her chest grew heavier. It wasn't until Raj touched her shoulder gently that she realized she'd been standing in front of the coffee maker for several minutes, staring at nothing. "Take a break," he said quietly. "I've got this." Min nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She headed for the storage room, her safe haven when the diner became too much. The familiar smell of coffee beans and cleaning supplies usually calmed her, but today even that felt wrong. She didn't hear the storage room door open. The coffee's not going to answer back, no matter how long you stare at it. Min spun around to find Jun standing in the doorway, a stack of papers under his arm. He'd become a regular over the past few weeks, quietly working in his corner, occasionally sharing a thoughtful comment that always seemed to hit home. "I'm fine," Min said automatically, reaching for her usual smile. But this time, it wouldn't come. Her face crumpled, and to her horror, she felt tears spilling down her cheeks. Instead of offering empty words, Jun simply pulled up an overturned bucket and sat down. He didn't speak, didn't try to fix anything. He just waited. "I used to be them," Min finally whispered, her voice rough. "The happy couple. The matching rings. The inside jokes and shared breakfasts. Until I wasn't anymore." "And now?" Jun asked softly. "Now I'm the funny waitress. The one who makes everyone laugh. It's easier that way. Safer." Min wiped her eyes with the corner of her apron. "Nobody expects anything real from the person who's always joking." "Except yourself," Jun said, his voice gentle but firm. The truth of his words hit Min like a physical blow. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, surrounded by boxes of napkins and coffee filters. "I don't know how to be anything else anymore." "Maybe you don't have to be anything else," Jun suggested. "Maybe you just have to be more of who you already are." A weak laugh escaped Min's lips. "Is this your professional advice?" "No," Jun smiled. "This is just one person talking to another in a storage room full of coffee beans." For the first time in years, Min felt something shift inside her, like a door creaking open after being locked for too long. The storage room's fluorescent light flickered overhead, casting strange shadows on the walls, but somehow the darkness didn't feel so threatening anymore. "I should get back out there," Min said finally, standing up and straightening her apron. "Can't leave Raj alone too long. He'll start telling his awful dad jokes again." Jun stood too, but before he could leave, Min touched his arm. "Thank you," she said simply, "for seeing me." As she walked back into the diner, Min felt different. Lighter, maybe, or just more real. The happy couple was gone, but their empty coffee cups remained. Min picked them up, and this time, the sight didn't break her heart. It just reminded her that some things end, but maybe that just makes room for new beginnings. The following week brought subtle changes to the golden pancake. Min still cracked jokes and balanced plates with expert precision, but something was different. Her laughter came more easily now, less like armor and more like genuine joy. The regulars noticed, especially Mr. Lee, who found himself sharing more about his grandchildren's adventures instead of just nodding at Min's usual quips. Jun had claimed the corner table as his unofficial office, spreading out his papers each morning as predictably as the sunrise. He'd become such a fixture that other customers started calling it the counselor's corner. Min found herself drawn to that corner during quiet moments, like a moth to a gentle flame. "Your coffee's getting cold," she said one morning, sliding to the seat across from him during her break. The diner was peaceful, with only the soft clink of dishes and murmured conversations filling the air. John looked up from his papers, pushing his glasses back up his nose. "I get distracted easily," he admitted, "especially when I'm trying to help someone find their way through grief." Min picked up one of his empty sugar packets, folding it into tiny triangles. "Does it ever get easier? Hearing all those sad stories?" "They're not all sad," John replied, closing his notebook. "Sometimes they're about finding hope in unexpected places, like diners with witty waitresses." Min felt her cheeks warm, but for once she didn't hide behind a joke. "I've been thinking about what you said, about being more of who I already am." She smoothed out the sugar packet, then folded it again. "It's scarier than I thought it would be." "Growth usually is," Jun said softly. Then, after a pause, "My wife used to say that courage isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing it anyway." Min's hands stilled. "Used to." "She passed away 3 years ago," Jun said, his voice gentle but steady. "That's why I became a grief counselor. I wanted to help others find their way back to living, just like I had to." The revelation hung between them like a delicate thread. Min thought about all the times she'd seen him sitting alone, helping others while carrying his own story. It made her own walls seem a little less necessary, a little more transparent. Raj watched from behind the counter as Min's usual sharp edges continued to soften. He noticed how she started listening more than talking, how her jokes became less about deflection and more about genuine connection. When a young mother struggled with a fussy baby, Min didn't just crack a joke. She held the baby so the mother could eat her breakfast in peace. "You're different lately," Raj commented one afternoon as they refilled salt shakers. "Good different." Min sprinkled some spilled salt over her shoulder, an old habit she'd picked up from her grandmother. "Maybe I'm just tired of pretending that nothing ever hurts." "About time," Raj grinned, dodging the dish towel she threw at him. The diner itself seemed to change with Min's transformation. Regular customers started sharing more of their lives, their struggles, their joys, their ordinary everyday moments. The elderly couple by the window told her about their 50 years of marriage. The college student who always ordered extra toast opened up about his struggles with finals. One rainy morning, similar to the day Jun first walked in, Min found herself telling him about her ex-husband, about the dreams they'd shared over countless diner breakfasts, and how those dreams had crumbled like day-old coffee cake. Jun listened without judgment, his presence steady as the rain outside. "You know what's funny?" Min said, wiping down his table even though it was already clean. "I used to think being strong meant never letting anyone see you break. Now I'm starting to think maybe it's about letting yourself be put back together differently." "How's that working out for you?" Jun asked, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Min looked around the diner. At Mr. Lee doing his crossword, at Raj singing off-key in the kitchen, at the morning light painting everything in soft gold. "It's a work in progress," she answered honestly. "But for the first time in a long time, I'm not just waiting for the next punchline." The bell of the door chimed as new customers walked in. Min straightened her apron and headed toward them, her smile real and ready. Behind her, Jun watched with quiet pride as she greeted them, still witty, still quick with a joke, but now with something more, the courage to be herself, broken pieces and all. The Golden Pancake had always been more than just a diner. It was a morning ritual, a comfort zone, a place where coffee came with a side of friendship. But as autumn painted the city streets in shades of gold and red, something magical began to happen within its walls. It started with small changes in Min's interactions. Instead of just serving Mr. Lee his usual black coffee, She began asking about his grandchildren's school plays and soccer games. His corner booth transformed into a proud grandfather's gallery, with photos carefully arranged between the sugar packets and cream. "My youngest won her first spelling bee yesterday," Mr. Lee announced one morning, beaming as he showed Min a picture on his phone. "That deserves a celebration," Min declared, returning moments later with a slice of apple pie topped with an extra scoop of ice cream. On the house, spelling champions get special treatment here. The college student who always sat at the counter, nose buried in textbooks, found himself drawn into conversations with other customers. Min had noticed his engineering books and introduced him to a retired architect who now came in regularly to mentor him over morning coffee. Raj watched all of this with quiet amazement. The diner's atmosphere had shifted from a place of quick meals and quicker jokes to something warmer, more connected. Even the morning rush felt different, less rushed, more like a community gathering. "You started something here," he told Min one quiet afternoon as they restocked supplies. "People aren't just coming for the food anymore." Min paused, a stack of napkins in her hands. Maybe they never were. Maybe we all just needed someone to see past our everyday faces. The proof of her words came alive every day. The young mother with the fussy baby now had a whole network of honorary grandparents giving her breaks and advice. The quiet businessman who always sat alone by the window had joined a morning coffee group with other regulars. One rainy morning, an elderly woman came in looking lost and confused. Instead of just seating her, Min noticed the grief in her eyes, the same look she'd seen in her own mirror not so long ago. "First time eating alone?" Min asked gently, bringing her a cup of tea without being asked. The woman nodded, twisting her wedding ring. "First week without him. 47 years, and now." Min glanced at Jun in his corner, who gave her an encouraging nod. "Then you're sitting at the family table today," she declared, leading the woman to a large booth where the morning regulars gathered. By the end of breakfast, the woman had 3 new phone numbers and plans for weekly team meetings. Even the physical space of the diner began to reflect its evolving spirit. Raj hung a community bulletin board near the entrance, quickly filled with job postings, room rentals, and event announcements. The walls, once decorated with generic diner art, now displayed local photographers' work and children's drawings. Jun's corner remained his office, but now others would occasionally join him, seeking advice or just a friendly ear. Min watched how he balanced professional distance with genuine warmth, learning from his example how to be present for others without losing herself. "You've learned the secret," Jun commented one day as Min refreshed his coffee. "What secret is that?" she asked, pausing at his table. "That real connection happens when we stop performing and start participating." He gestured around the diner. "You're not just serving food anymore. You're serving hope, one cup of coffee at a time." Min felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the coffee pot in her hand. "I had a good teacher," she replied, then added with a hint of her old sass, "even if he does let his coffee get cold while writing profound observations." The laughter that followed was real, just like everything else was becoming at the Golden Pancake. Through the front windows, the autumn sun cast long shadows across the checkered floor, but inside, the light seemed to come from the people themselves, each one bringing their own glow to this place that had become more than just a diner. It was becoming a home, where broken hearts could heal, lonely souls could find connection, and a once guarded waitress could finally let her true self shine through, discovering that her gift for making people laugh was even more powerful when mixed with genuine love. The first morning Jun didn't come to the diner, Min barely noticed. Everyone missed a day now and then. It was perfectly normal. By the third day, she caught herself glancing at his empty corner table more often than she'd like to admit. After a week, the worry had settled in her stomach like cold coffee. "Maybe he's just busy with work," Raj suggested, watching Min reorganize the sugar packets in Jun's usual spot for the third time that morning. "Yeah, maybe," Min replied, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. The corner felt darker somehow, as if Jun's absence had taken some of the light with it. 10 days into his disappearance, Mr. Lee came in clutching his morning newspaper with unusual urgency. "Min," he called out, his voice tight with concern. "You need to see this." The article was small, tucked between ads for local businesses. "Local counselor injured in car accident," the headline read. Min's hands shook as she read about the rainy night, the slippery road, the other driver who ran a red light. Jun was alive but hospitalized. 2 years ago, this would have been her cue to retreat, to build her walls higher, to hide behind jokes and quick wit, to protect herself from caring too much. But Min wasn't that person anymore. "Raj," she called out, already untying her apron. "I need to take my break. A long one." The hospital corridor smelled of disinfectant and uncertainty. Min clutched the paper bag containing a slice of apple pie, Jun's favorite, feeling oddly vulnerable in her street clothes instead of her familiar uniform. She'd never seen him outside the diner before. Room 315 was quiet except for the steady beeping of monitors. Jun lay there, looking smaller somehow without his usual stack of papers and contemplative smile. A cast encased his left leg, and bruises painted shadows across his face. "You know," Min said, trying to keep her voice steady, "there are easier ways to get out of paying your coffee tab." Jun's eyes fluttered open, and despite the pain evident in his face, he smiled. "I was wondering when you'd show up." "Well, someone had to make sure you hadn't found a better diner." Min pulled up a chair, setting the pie on his bedside table. "Though I have to say, the service here looks terrible. No coffee refills at all." They fell into their familiar pattern of conversation, but something was different now. Min wasn't hiding behind her humor. She was using it to bring light into a dark moment, just as Jun had done for so many others. Over the next 2 weeks, the Golden Pancakes community rallied. Regulars asked about Jun daily, sending cards and well wishes. The college student offered to bring Jun his study materials so he wouldn't fall behind in his counseling courses. Mr. Lee's wife knitted a blanket in soft blue wool. Min found herself spending her breaks and after-work hours at the hospital. She brought Jun updates about the diner, shared stories about the regulars, and sometimes just sat quietly while he rested. She learned about his physical therapy schedule, celebrated small victories like sitting up unassisted, and worried about his pain levels more than she wanted to admit. "You don't have to keep coming," Jun said one evening, watching Min arrange fresh flowers beside his bed. "I know it's a long trip from the diner." Min paused, really looking at him. "Remember when you sat with me in that storage room? When I was falling apart over coffee beans and memories?" She straightened the flowers with careful fingers. "Sometimes showing up is the most important thing we can do for each other." The truth of those words echoed in her chest. This wasn't just about repaying a kindness or helping a friend. This was about choosing to be present, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. On her way home that night, Min realized something that both terrified and excited her. Somewhere between serving coffee and sitting in hospital rooms, between jokes and genuine conversations, between breaking down and building up again, she'd learned that real strength wasn't about keeping people out. It was about letting them in. The next morning, she served coffee with her usual wit, but her heart was in room 315, where a counselor was healing, and with him, perhaps, the last of her own wounds were finally beginning to mend. Spring arrived at the Golden Pancake with a burst of cherry blossoms and new beginnings. The morning sun painted the diner in warm light as Min arranged fresh flowers on the counter, a habit she'd picked up during those hospital visits months ago. "Look who finally decided to grace us with his presence," she called out as the bell chimed. Jun walked in, his limp barely noticeable now, carrying his familiar stack of papers. The regulars burst into applause, making him blush as he made his way to his corner table. "Welcome back, stranger," Min said, already pouring his coffee. Though I should warn you, your tables become pretty popular while you were away. The morning knitting circles claimed it 3 times this week. I'm sure we can work out a timeshare agreement, Jun replied, his eyes crinkling with warmth. The ease between them felt different now, shaped by all those hospital room conversations and quiet moments of healing. The diner had changed too. Photos of the community covered one wall. Mr. Lee's grandchildren's art shows, the college students' graduation ceremony, birthday celebrations, and quiet everyday moments. Among them was a picture from Jun's welcome home party, where Min's laughter wasn't a shield anymore, but a bridge, connecting her to everyone around her. You know what I realized? Min said later that morning, sliding to the seat across from Jun during her break. I used to think I was just serving food and making jokes. But we're really serving stories here. Everyone who walks through that door brings one with them. Jun nodded, understanding as always. And what's your story now? Min looked around the diner. At Raj singing along to the radio, at the elderly couple sharing their daily crossword puzzle, at the young mother whose baby now toddled between tables, welcomed by everyone. My story? She smiled, reaching across the table to straighten Jun's papers, a gesture that felt as natural as breathing. It's still being written, but I like where it's going. The morning rush brought its usual parade of customers, but now Min saw each one clearly, not as audiences for her jokes, but as fellow travelers on life's journey. She still cracked wise about the burnt toast and made puns about the pancakes, but her humor had transformed from a wall into a welcome mat. Remember when you used to hide behind those jokes? Raj asked as they closed up that evening. The sunset painted the diner in shades of gold and pink. I wasn't hiding, Min protested, then laughed at his raised eyebrow. Okay, maybe I was. But sometimes you have to get lost to find your way back. Jun stayed late that night, helping Min wipe down tables even though she insisted he didn't have to. You've come a long way from that storage room breakdown, he observed. Well, I had a pretty good guide, Min replied, bumping his shoulder gently with hers. Even if he did abandon us for a hospital vacation. Best vacation ever, Jun deadpanned, making Min laugh. A real deep laugh that echoed through the empty diner. As they stood in the doorway, the evening air soft with spring promises, Min realized something profound. She wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop anymore. She wasn't bracing for the next heartbreak or hiding behind the next joke. She was simply here, fully present, fully herself. Coffee tomorrow? Jun asked, his hand finding hers in the gathering dusk. Of course, Min replied. Someone has to make sure you don't let it get cold while you're solving everyone else's problems. The bell chimed one last time as they left, its familiar sound now carrying a new note of possibility. The golden pancake stood quiet in the evening light, its windows reflecting the day's last rays like memories of laughter and love. Min had learned that redemption wasn't about becoming someone new. It was about finding the courage to be who you really are. Her wit and humor hadn't disappeared. They just found their proper place in her heart, alongside the newfound ability to love, to trust, and to believe in second chances. Tomorrow would bring new customers, new stories, new challenges. But for the first time in years, Min was ready for all of it. The laughter and the tears, the jokes and the serious moments, the simple acts of serving coffee and the profound act of being truly seen. After all, life, like the best diners, was about mixing the sweet with the bitter and finding beauty in both.